Karoline Leavitt settled into her first-class seat, tucking her carry-on beneath the seat in front of her. The flight from New York to Miami was just a couple of hours, and she planned to get some work done before landing. As she adjusted her seatbelt, she felt the weight of her necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small cross pendant, a gift from her grandmother. A flight attendant, a woman with a sharp bob and a name tag that read Lisa, approached with a strained smile. "Would you like something to drink before takeoff?" she asked. "Just water, please," Karoline replied, returning the smile. Lisa's gaze lingered on Karoline's necklace for a moment before she let out a small scoff. "That's quite the statement piece," she said, her voice laced with condescension. Karoline glanced down at her necklace, confused. "Excuse me?" "It's just surprising," Lisa continued, crossing her arms. "Wearing something like that so boldly in first class. Not everyone appreciates those kinds of displays, you know." A few heads turned in their seats, sensing the tension. Karoline's expression remained composed, but she could feel a surge of irritation. "I wasn't aware that a small cross was offensive," she said calmly. Lisa gave a tight-lipped smile. "Well, some people find it outdated, a little inconsiderate. To force religious symbols in shared spaces, don't you think?" A man seated across the aisle cleared his throat. "I don't see a problem with her necklace," he said. "People wear all sorts of symbols. Why single hers out?" Lisa's confidence wavered for a second, but she quickly regained her composure. "I'm just saying, in first class we try to maintain a certain atmosphere of inclusivity." Karoline took a slow breath. "Inclusivity doesn't mean erasing personal beliefs. It means respecting differences. If someone has an issue with my necklace, that's their problem, not mine." A murmur of agreement spread through the cabin. Lisa's face flushed slightly. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but another flight attendant appeared behind her. "Lisa, can I speak with you for a moment?" Lisa shot Karoline a final look before following her colleague to the galley. A few minutes later, a different flight attendant returned with Karoline's water. "Apologies for that," she said in a hushed tone. "We'll be handling the rest of your service today." As the plane took off, Karoline glanced down at her necklace and smiled, gripping the cross lightly between her fingers. Some people might not like it, but that wasn't her concern. She knew who she was, and she wasn't about to hide it. As the plane leveled out, Karoline leaned back in her seat, the tension from the earlier encounter slowly fading. She had dealt with criticism before, whether for her beliefs, her opinions, or even just existing in certain spaces where people thought she didn't belong. But she had never been one to back down. The man across the aisle gave her a nod. "Handled that well," he said. "Some people forget that respect goes both ways." Karoline smiled. "I appreciate that. It's not the first time I've dealt with something like this, and I doubt it'll be the last." "Name's Mark," he said, extending his hand. "I run a small business in Miami." "And you?" She shook his hand. "Karoline, I work in media and politics." Mark raised an eyebrow. "That explains the composure. Bet you've had your fair share of debates." "You could say that," she said with a chuckle. A short while later, Lisa reappeared, her posture stiff, her face noticeably less confident. She stopped beside Karoline's seat, clasping her hands together. "Miss Leavitt, I wanted to apologize if I came off as rude earlier." Karoline studied her for a moment. The forced politeness was obvious, but at least she was making the effort. "I appreciate that," she said, "but next time maybe just let people be themselves." Lisa gave a tight nod and walked away, her usual air of authority noticeably subdued. As the flight continued, Karoline turned to her laptop, but she couldn't help but glance at her necklace again. The cross was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a reminder of strength, of faith, of resilience. By the time the plane landed in Miami, the incident felt like a distant memory. Karoline stepped off the aircraft with her head high, ready to take on whatever came next. As Karoline walked through the jet bridge into the bustling Miami airport, she felt a renewed sense of confidence. The encounter on the plane had been a reminder that standing firm in her beliefs often invited pushback, but that never meant backing down. Mark caught up beside her, rolling his carry-on. "So, Karoline, do you ever get tired of these little battles?" She smirked. Nope. It just proves how important it is to keep having them. He chuckled. Fair enough. Listen, if you ever find yourself in need of a good cup of coffee in Miami, I know a spot. Consider it a thanks for standing up to that nonsense earlier. She appreciated the offer but wasn't sure about taking him up on it. I'll keep that in mind, she said politely. As they parted ways, Karoline checked her phone. A few notifications had popped up from friends and colleagues who had already heard about the flight attendant incident. News traveled fast in her circles. A quick text from a journalist friend read, "Just heard about what happened on your flight. Want to comment?" She thought about it for a moment. The old Karoline might have let it slide, but she knew that silence often allowed these moments to be swept under the rug. People should be free to express their faith without being shamed for it. Respect and tolerance go both ways. Happy to discuss further. She hit send, knowing this conversation was far from over. As she stepped into the Miami sunlight, she smiled. Another challenge faced, another opportunity ahead. This was just one flight, one moment. But it was also a reminder that standing firm in who she was would always be worth it. As Karoline made her way to baggage claim, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from her assistant. "Karoline, I think you should check Twitter. The flight incident is already trending." She sighed and tapped open the app. Sure enough, Deutsche, Crossgate, and a Leather Believe were climbing the charts. Someone on the flight must have posted about the confrontation because a video clip had surfaced. It showed Lisa's condescending remark about the cross and Karoline's calm but firm response. Comments were pouring in. Why is a flight attendant shaming a passenger over a necklace? This is ridiculous. Whether you believe in religion or not, this kind of hostility toward someone's faith is unacceptable. Karoline handled that like a boss. Respect. Of course, not everyone was supportive. Some comments accused her of exaggerating the situation for attention, while others defended Lisa, claiming she was just encouraging inclusivity. Karoline rolled her eyes. The irony of people using inclusivity as a reason to suppress individual expression never failed to amaze her. As she reached the carousel, she spotted a group of reporters gathered near the exit, cameras in hand. News really did travel fast. She took a deep breath. This was something she had dealt with before. Time to handle it head on. The moment she stepped forward, the questions flew at her. "Karoline, do you think the airline should take action against the flight attendant? Are you planning to file a complaint? Do you think religious discrimination is getting worse in public spaces?" She held up a hand, signaling for calm. "Look, I'm not here to ruin someone's career over a bad moment. But let's be clear. No one should be shamed for their personal beliefs, whether it's religion, culture, or anything else. This isn't about punishing someone. It's about making sure respect goes both ways." The reporters kept pressing, but Karoline didn't waver. She answered with poise, making sure the conversation stayed about the bigger picture rather than just one rude flight attendant. A few minutes later, her driver pulled up. As she slid into the car, her phone buzzed again. This time, a statement from the airline. "We are aware of an incident involving one of our flight attendants and a passenger. We strive to create a welcoming environment for all travelers and are reviewing the situation internally." Karoline smirked. That was corporate. We're scrambling to cover this up before it gets worse. She leaned back in her seat, watching the city blur past. This was never just about a necklace. It was about standing firm when others tried to push you down. And if this situation had sparked a bigger conversation, all the better. One flight, one moment. But maybe, just maybe, it would make a difference. As Karoline scrolled through the endless flood of comments and news articles, she saw that conservative and faith-based organizations were already weighing in. Some praised her for standing her ground, while others called for stronger action against the airline. Meanwhile, mainstream media outlets were picking up the story with their own spin, some portraying her as a victim of religious discrimination, others suggesting she had overreacted to a harmless comment. She smirked at that last one. There was nothing harmless about telling someone they shouldn't wear a symbol of their faith. Her phone rang. Her assistant again. "Hey, You're officially the most talked about person on Twitter today, assistant said, half joking. You might want to consider making a formal statement before this narrative gets out of control. Karoline exhaled. She knew how these things worked. If she stayed silent too long, others would shape the story for her. Set up a quick video post, she said. I'll record something now. A few moments later, her assistant sent her a link to a live feed. Karoline steadied herself, then hit record. Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a moment to address what happened on my flight today, she began. I didn't expect a simple necklace to become the center of controversy, but here we are. Let me be clear. I don't think anyone should be shamed or belittled for their beliefs. Respect and inclusivity should go both ways. Wearing a cross, a Star of David, a hijab, or any other personal symbol should never be a problem. That's the beauty of living in a free society. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I don't want to see anyone lose their job over this, but I do think it's a conversation worth having. We can't let tolerance turn into an excuse to silence people. Real inclusivity means allowing everyone to express themselves, whether you agree with them or not. She ended the video there, keeping it short but powerful. Within minutes, comments flooded in. Well said. Inclusivity means everyone, not just the people you agree with. Karoline is handling this with class. That's leadership. We need more people like her speaking up. As Karoline walked into the hotel lobby, she could feel the weight of the day settling on her shoulders. The viral storm around her flight incident was still raging, but she wasn't going to let it consume her. She checked in, took the key, card from the front desk, and made her way to her suite, eager for a moment of peace. Before she could set her bags down, her phone rang again. This time, a number she recognized but hadn't expected. Congressman Willis, she answered, surprised. Karoline, the familiar voice boomed. Saw the video. You handled yourself well. We need more voices like yours standing up for personal freedom. She appreciated the support, but she wasn't sure where this was going. I wasn't trying to make headlines, Congressman, she said. I just refused to let someone tell me what I could or couldn't wear. That's exactly why people respect you, he replied. Look, I'm not calling just to offer praise. We're planning a panel next week in D.C. on freedom of expression in public spaces. Religious liberty is a huge part of that conversation. We'd love to have you speak. Karoline hesitated. She wasn't a stranger to public speaking, but this wasn't just a news cycle. It was turning into something much bigger. I appreciate the invitation, she said carefully. Let me think it over. Of course, just know that this is a moment that matters. A lot of people are watching, and your voice could make a real impact. She ended the call and sank onto the couch, staring at the city lights beyond the window. In less than 24 hours, what had started as a petty insult on a plane had escalated into a national discussion. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from her grandmother. Proud of you, my sweet girl. Never let anyone dim your light. Karoline smiled, gripping the cross pendant between her fingers. Maybe this was bigger than just her. Maybe this was a chance to stand for something that mattered. She took a deep breath, already knowing her answer. Tomorrow, she would call back the congressman. And then, she would prepare for whatever came next. The car pulled up to her hotel. Karoline felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about setting a precedent that no one should be shamed for their beliefs, no matter who they were or where they sat on a plane. She stepped out, knowing the story was far from over. But she was ready for whatever came next. The next morning, Karoline woke up to even more media coverage. News outlets were dissecting her response, influencers were weighing in, and the airline had finally issued a follow-up statement. We take all concerns seriously and are committed to fostering an inclusive and welcoming environment for all passengers. The flight attendant involved has been placed on temporary leave while we conduct an internal review. Karoline wasn't sure how she felt about that. She never wanted to get someone fired, but accountability mattered. If this moment sparked real conversations about double standards and inclusivity, then maybe it was worth it. She scrolled through her notifications. Among them was a request for a sit-down interview with a major network, another from a well-known podcast, and of course, more calls for her to take legal action against the airline. Karoline sighed and dialed her assistant. "Good morning, boss," her assistant answered. "Ready for another day of being the most talked-about person in America?" Karoline chuckled. "Not exactly what I had planned when I boarded that flight." "Well, you're handling it like a pro." "So, what's next? You've got interview requests, a potential legal team offering to take on the case, and, oh, your panel invite in D.C. is getting traction. People want you to speak." Karoline ran a hand through her hair. "Let's schedule the panel in D.C. I'll use that platform to focus on the bigger issue, how inclusivity shouldn't mean silencing people of faith." "Got it. And the interviews?" "I'll do one. Something balanced. No outrage bait, just a real conversation." "Good call," her assistant said. "And the legal team?" Karoline hesitated. "I don't want this to turn into a lawsuit. It's not about money or revenge. It's about setting a precedent. Let's wait and see how the airline handles this." "Understood, I'll get everything lined up," her assistant said. "Oh, and one more thing. Your video from last night? 5 million views and counting." Karoline exhaled, standing by the window, watching Miami buzz with life below. She hadn't planned on becoming the face of this conversation, but she wouldn't run from it either. She picked up her necklace, letting the cross rest in her palm. This wasn't just about a rude flight attendant. It was about something much bigger, and she was ready to take it head on.